teacher this is my 12th year. I taught at one of the toughest middle schools in the Valley for 10, and now I'm currently back at my alma mater, which is my middle school, heading into the administrative roles. So.
And then Leticia.
To the United States when I was 8 years old. We immigrated here with my parents. I remember, I have a pretty large family, 7 brothers and sisters. And my father wanted to bring us here. He had been coming back and forth, again in Mexico, where I was born. It's a very small town. And he thought women were good enough to just have kids. And he's like, oh, darn, I gotta feed these kids. So he figured out that he couldn't feed us there in Mexico. So he decided to bring us all here, but he wanted to do that legally. So he borrowed a lot of money and from friends and family members and brought us all here legally, so we all had our green card. So I never knew really what that was like, not to have papers, that phrase, you're gonna be undocumented. So it was an adventure. I was 8 years old. I was, not even 8 yet. I was 7, and so it was an adventure to me to immigrate to a whole new world, leave everything I knew behind. It was extremely difficult for my siblings. Because they were a little bit older and understood a little bit more the change that was happening. So I didn't speak any English either. I came here, took life as it came, and I want to say that I quote unquote assimilated very quickly. I learned the language within a few years. I loved school. School was my escape in a way from my traditional family, very traditional father. Things go my way, it's my way or the highway, and oh God, I love that phrase. And so I just went against it. He said no, I was like, yes. He said no, I said yes again. So that was my whole attitude as one of the youngest one of the 8. So I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and 5 were older. So if I got in trouble with like 7 people, not just my dad. So that's the way it was in my household, and I just developed this eagerness and this love and desire to just go get whatever it is I wanted. And so if my dad said, no, you're not going to be in drill team, I was like, yes, I'm going to be in drill team. And you're not going to date this race, because I had my first boyfriend is black, and nope, we don't mix. And I was like, oh, I'm dating him for a long time. And so I did that constantly. And now I date a woman. So now he's like, wow, that's really out there, right? When I actually asked him for permission, because I had to ask for permission to go to college, he was like, what? You don't want to get married and have kids like everybody else? Like, it just was so different for him, and I understood that. So with tears in my eyes, I asked him to allow me to go to college, and he said, I lied. And I said that at Mount St. Mary's, the nuns were going to tuck us in, so he said, okay. He didn't know the other stuff. But sure enough, I ended up at Mount St. Mary's, and I love the experience. To this day, when I pay my student loans, I always say I'm paying for my freedom, because that's really what I earned and what I got there. So as time went by, I never even saw the idea of not completing college, and all I knew my entire life was that I wanted to be a teacher. I did not know I was going to be a middle school teacher. I did not know I was going to teach the language I learned. I had no idea. And then when I became a teacher and I fell in love with it, my principal at the time, on my first year as a teacher, said, you're going to be a great principal one day. And I brushed her off and said, you're crazy. That's not for me. That's not what I'm going to do. And 11 years later, I found an amazing program that allowed me to see myself in that role. And so that's what I just finished over the summer. It's a Principal Leadership Institute at UCLA. I completed that program over the summer. And it was the most amazing thing that I've done in the past 15 years. It really brought me back to the concept of what I believe in, which is social justice. And so the focus is, how do we get our children of color to have an equal education that they deserve? Because although segregation has ended, unfortunately, we see more segregation in our schools than we have in the past. And so that is a topic that we covered in our class so many times, that it's what drives me to reach for that goal to become a principal one day and really change policy within the school district.
Something that I sort of noticed a commonality with you, and I don't know if the DCs had the same experience, but I know that in my own family I have, and I hear it a lot among Latinos, is that you often, to advance, you are fighting your own family, particularly your male. And that if, for non-Latinos in the room, that it's not easy. Like, the way Maria is talking about, it's not easy to necessarily tell your dad, no, like, I'm going to do what I want. So that is just sort of sometimes often a barrier that you deal with, whether you are 50 or 15, like, they are always going to tell you what to do. And so I just want to echo that sort of is like sort of a large challenge, and it never goes away. And I don't know if it's other cultures as well, but one specific to us.
I wanted to add to that, that I find myself as an educator now going to parents' homes, or going to children's homes to speak to the parents about letting their female daughters go to college. Mm-hmm. It is the craziest thing to think that they don't understand that college is a positive thing. They just see, oh, my daughter is going off to an unknown land or an unknown place where my child is potentially going to be harmed, and I'm not going to be there to like protect her. Mm-hmm. It's a very scary thing for them. So we do encourage, and once they see Latinas in their community, they're like, oh, okay, she did it. Okay, my daughter can do it too. But it's hard sometimes when the majority of the teachers that we see in our schools are not.
Yeah, I think is the role model, the lack of role model that makes other people think that you're not gonna get there. You're better off if you don't try. Right. You know, my dad kind of said that to me when I called him and I said, hey, Daddy, I think I'm good to apply for NASA now. I have everything I feel like I need. And he's like, I don't think you should. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what do you mean I shouldn't? And he's like, no, I don't think you should because, you know, what if you don't get in? Like, I understand he's coming from a good spot, but at the same time, it was kind of like, you know, if you apply and you don't get in, it's going to break your heart. Why don't you go for something that is not as hard so you can actually get in? And it's like, I'm struggling with the same thing because I'm part of the board member of a museum in Downey where 70% of the population is Latino, and I think that the gap that I have noticed is there aren't role models, and in addition to that, there is a gap in understanding how much money you actually make if you go to college. Right. So when you have the discussion of if you go for this career, your son, daughter could actually get this amount of money paid, this is the short amount of time that they need to invest, then everyone starts thinking like, okay, yeah, this can actually make sense for them.
But that's how I start the school year now. I introduce graphs that show the students like what, you know, and this is middle school, by the way, 7th graders. This is what you could, you know, make if you go to college, and it literally has like high school graduation, you know, some college, 4-year degree, and so on, and it shows them like this is, you know, when you get a master's or a doctorate, this is where you're going to be. And then I tell them, I'm right here, you know, so can you. And everybody here in my classroom can be that, or can be anything they want to be. And I start the year off that way, so they can visually see that graph. It stays with them, hopefully. Hopefully.
I hope that there are a lot more teachers like you and LAS students. And so actually, I'm glad that you brought up role models, because I think role models and mentors are incredibly important. And oftentimes, if you are from an underrepresented community, it's hard. Like, who do you look up to? And particularly even among just all women, it's hard sometimes, especially in a male-dominated field. So can you guys talk a little bit about sort of the importance of role models, mentors, if you have any? Leticia, you want to start?
Sure. I had the privilege of having 2 older sisters that really kind of helped me pave my path. And for me, they were my role models. And we're about 5 years apart, and I followed them everywhere. And they dragged me along, I guess. They were already in college, and so I had an early exposure to it. Also, my mother, as she integrated herself into American culture, she also pursued education, higher education. So my mother, when she was, she had, I think, 3 of us at the time. She went back to school. So she actually worked full time, and in the evening, she was in class. And so we were in class with her. She always had professors that allowed us to sit in the back of the class. And so I saw my mother pursuing her own education. And so really they were my role models up until I reached college age. And at that time, I had a number of friends whose parents were professionals, And their mothers were very supportive of us, and they exposed us to various professions. And my best friend in particular, her mother was an executive director of a battered women's shelter. And she took me under her wing and offered me a volunteer opportunity at a battered women's shelter. And that was really what gave me the exposure to that whole underground movement of women helping women. And you know, got a job on weekends. And so she was another person that kind of took me under her wing, mentored me. When I graduated from college, I worked with the YWCA, which is another feminist organization, and there were tons of women that were older than me that I was surrounded with that were my mentors. And so I was lucky enough to not only seek them out because I was hungry for knowledge and hungry for having women that were going to be positive role models in my life, but also in my family. My sisters were very supportive in filling that role as well. And now I still have mentors. I mean, Gloria Gray, who's the woman that we recently elected as chair of the Metropolitan Water District Board.
Enough, I can't think of anybody really that I felt like was mentoring me through the process, because all my siblings didn't like school. So I loved school. It was my like a safe place for me. And teachers, I think I looked up to them. I specifically remember my 6th grade teacher, Miss Martinson. You know, this tall, blonde, you know, beautiful, voluptuous, you know, hair. She was just a beautiful person, and we're still friends today. But I think she was more of someone who motivated me to become a teacher, but I don't think she mentored me through the process. My mom always says I'm a little, she's like, I don't know where you came from, hija. Yo no sé dónde vienes. That's my mom too. Yeah, because I had desires and passions that they could not relate to. They're like, why do you always have a book in your hand? I don't know, Mom, I love reading. So then, you know, I was so weird within my family. So I don't know, I always had this drive to do for me and to be better and do different things and try new things. My sister and my mom, I think, kept me very grounded in my values at home, but I wasn't necessarily mentored through my career. Along the way, I found people I connected with, you know, classmates maybe that I had, that liked the same things that I did, or that, you know, just really wanted to get that A in class. And by the way, I'm a C average kid, never really earned straight A's. I was very C average because I was also very social. But now I'm finding myself now in my 30s more spiritual than ever before. Even though I grew up Catholic, I consider myself a spiritual person. And one of my huge mentors is right here, my partner, Michelle. She's an author and a sports coach and a life coach. So when I tell my friends, like, oh, I go home to a life coach, everyone's like, you're so lucky. I know. She's amazing, and I talk about her all day long. Amazing person, amazing human being who, again, she's my best friend and my partner, and also an amazing support system. So, you know, now I look to her like, oh, what do you think? What do you think about this? I come home and tell her everything all my ideas and everything I do in the classroom, and then she gives me her feedback, and then, you know, I kind of bounce everything off of her. So I look to her for mentorship. No pressure, babe. But I look to her for mentorship, and then I also she has a lot of great advice in terms of you know, spirituality. So you know, we listen to Michael Bernard Beckwith, who, you know, the Salon Theater is right down the street from here, and he's one of our mentors together. And then we learn, you know, together in terms of spirituality. But I can't pinpoint one person right now.
Do you think at LUSD, like, if you, I don't know if you want to be a principal or something one day, but do you think that there are people within LUSD that you look to and think that this person has come to me and said, I want to help you, or you do
definitely.
Okay.
Within LAUSD, such a large district, but really a small one, because we're separated into like northeast, northwest, south, and so on. So in the Northeast District, my principal, who again saw potential in me way back when I was 23, 24, and she was actually the person who mentored me and took me under her wing at the time as a first year teacher. And I don't like to compare myself to others, so I don't want to say I want to be like her, but there are a lot of qualities that she has that she's definitely taught me in terms of like being transparent as a principal, being vulnerable with your staff, always asking for their opinion, considering their thoughts and perspectives rather than just making a decision over them or over their heads. She's just an incredible human being that I think I've learned so much from her. She's now a little higher up in the position, so she's now a director.
But that's better for you.
Yeah, I know. I just
when your mentors are
I still call her boss. She's like, hey boss, I need a letter of rec. You got one? She's like, for sure. Like it's someone I can go to for pretty much anything and advice too.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. And Diana, what about you? Especially working in such a male-dominated field. Like,
Yeah, so I think that very similar to you, Maria. I feel like it's a hard conversation to have with your family. I mean, back in Colombia, my mom went to school for accounting, and so did my dad. And so then sitting down with them and be like, I want to go to the moon. So like, Minita, you don't know what you're talking about. And when you're 15, I still want to go to the moon. Like now, and so I think that, and then having the confusion between astronomy and astrology, like those are two nothing wrong with either, but just different. And yeah, it's just hard. It's like, what role models are we talking about? And like, maybe the NASA logo? And my role model was totally the NASA logo. It was like, smart people go there. I think I should go there. And then it wasn't, I didn't meet anybody that I felt like I want to be like you or I want to aspire to be you. I think that it eventually evolved because it was more to me like, what are the values, right? What are the right things to do? And it was also the fact that I relate a lot to what you're saying, Maria, is like, you cannot do it because you're a woman. Well, you watch me do it.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that rebel attitude, but right? So I think that it was that combined with why not, and then recognizing that, well, then maybe I'm going to be the first, and that's not going to be any problem. I'm not going to do it because I want to be the first, but there's no reason why I couldn't be the first. And so then coming to the States, I have a story about that role model thing that you're talking about. So I went to community college, did the English thing, then got a full ride to go to University of Florida, which was crazy because I filled out the application like, oh, never got to college. And then I got accepted with scholarship, and I'm like, this is insane. And then I went to the admissions office, and I had to declare my major because I was coming from community college. And so I said, aerospace is space in the name, and I want to go to space, so I guess aerospace. I'm not joking, and so I went to the aerospace department, and I sat down on the line because we needed to meet the dean, and so all of them were white men, left and right, and I'm like, there's no women, and all of them are white males. And so I'm waiting, and you could imagine that throughout the entire time in that line, I'm telling myself, why not? Right? Like, that's why I'm not that smart. You went there, you had money, I didn't have money, I don't know English, I still confuse things, I still need to go to a tutor to check my essays. And so the line was so long, we were sitting on the floor, and then eventually you get to the two single chairs that are right in front of the dean's office, and I'm like, why am I here? Like, I'm totally gonna leave. And then I looked up, and there was those magazines that everyone reads, and there was a magazine that was a NASA magazine, which I still have. It was a NASA magazine featuring all female astronauts. And then I open it, and I'm like, looking like, oh my God, I could be any of these ladies. And then they call me, and I'm like, yes, I am going to do aerospace engineering. I feel like if he had called me 10 minutes earlier, I would have been like, I think you're calling them, like, not me. I don't think you were waiting for me. So anyways, I feel like the role models for me was that magazine at the right time, 2 minutes before I had to actually declare my major. Now, fast forwarding to today, I feel like decided at some point, I meet so many people at work, so many fantastic things happen. I just want, whose job do I want? It's kind of what I have. So I go to meetings and then I see this person kicking ass and doing amazing things. I'm like, I want to do that next. And so I would just go to them and be like, so how can I get your job in 10 years so you don't feel like I'm about to take your job in 5?
And by the way, I'm glad that I don't work with you because I would be scared that you come take my job.
But it's kind of like, and they're so open because I feel like one of my bosses told me at some point that, which was, I'm always looking to train the person that's going to take my job. And I thought that was so weird. But then eventually he explained to me, like, there's so many things in my line of work that we need to explore that looking at a single thing is already distracting me from all the stars or all the planets that we can be exploring. So I need somebody to take that one so I can go focus on the other one. And then we can do massive exploration. And that totally resonated with me. And so, anyway, so that's sort of kind of how I deal with role models today is I find somebody that has some character or specific personality that I am attracted or try to gravitate around, and then try to learn more about them and not be shy. But there's one thing that you did say that I want to finish with is I don't try to meet them because I need to respect myself and I need to realize that, you know, you are doing it this way because probably you have more years of experience on that particular aspect and I don't. Can you tell me how I can do it better? Because you clearly have succeeded on that area. But it's not like I want to be a mini you, because I need to be me.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I think I know the answer to this question already because you all are here. Do you feel a responsibility to create a pipeline for Latinas who are interested in taking on key leadership positions within your fields or in general? Sort of, if you didn't have mentors when you were younger, do you feel now that you have a responsibility now that you are all very important women? Do you feel a responsibility to create that pipeline?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel a huge responsibility to create a pipeline in my community for women that are interested in running for public office. And one of the things that I recently did, I've been working in politics, as I mentioned, for about 20 years, and I'm 46 years old. And at this point, I feel like I have a lot to teach. And I have a lot to teach young women about how to not just be an elected official, but how to create their own pathway to running a successful campaign and a winning campaign. And so I am a partner in, we just founded an organization called Strong Women Healing Their Community. And it's a nonprofit organization that will focus in my region of LA on training and developing women in leadership. And a component of that will deal specifically with training women how to apply for commissions, how to run for public office, and basically how to create the foundation necessary to be a successful elected official. So I feel a huge responsibility to do that because in my career, I've had to kind of learn several things from many, many people. And I don't feel like, was mentioned before, there was one individual that I could sit and talk to kind of help me build the career path that I wanted. So I do feel a huge responsibility to do that, and because of that, I'm doing what I'm doing in terms of the Strong Women Healing Their Community organization.
And to all three of you, I guess, like what, in terms of like, if you do feel a responsibility, then sort of what is particularly important about having more Latinas in your field? Or in general, in leadership in general?
We're in the year 2018, and I think it's really a damn shame that we're still having firsts. The board, the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, who was founded in 1928, as I mentioned, we just elected our first woman of color to serve as president of that agency, only the second woman in the history of the agency, I think is a big problem. You know, in 2005, I was the first Latina and only the second woman to serve as mayor in on my city council. And again, I think that's a huge problem. I believe that you know, our values represent the policies that we develop and create as elected officials, and I believe that oftentimes those policies reflect the values of family. For example, one of the programs that I created as a council member was a women and girls in sports program. And we didn't have any programs for our girls and women in our Parks and Recreation department. And I just thought that was really odd. You know, I grew up, when I was a little girl, I was a tomboy. And so I loved like ripping and running, you know, the streets and the parks and climbing trees and all that. And my family was like, ooh, what's wrong with her? But I really enjoyed that. And I feel that because I didn't allow, you know, myself to be limited by the influences around me that thought that it was not okay for me to play baseball or to play street football or to, you know, do those things. And unfortunately, you know, didn't have access to those programs in my parks. And I think that those are the very programs that help build leadership. You know, they help build the very skills that we need when we're sitting in a boardroom making decisions, developing public policy, you know, writing, deciding how we're going to get to the moon, you know, doing in our various professions, doing what we need to do. So, yeah.
I personally think that it is so important for our students to see teachers who look like them in our schools. I specifically chose to teach back in the district that I'm a product of. I attended LAUSD schools through my entire education, and I feel like there was a duty on my end to come back to my community, and now I teach at the school where I attended, middle school. It is now divided into two schools, same campus, and I teach at the smaller one because to me it's important for the students to see, you know, people that come back to the community and support. My goal as an educator is to inspire my students and to empower them, you know, to do absolutely anything that they set their minds to. I always teach them that effort is so much more valuable than brains. Yes, brains are important, but if you put effort, you are going to get wherever you want to get because your effort is there, right? I don't care if somebody has more money than you. I don't care if somebody's a different color than you. I don't care what the statistics behind you are. You are going to do, and you're going to do because you show effort, and you're going to get there.
Why, can you explain why you think, I mean, I agree with you, but can you explain why is it important for students to see teachers that look like them? What happens?
I think that many times our students, it's so easy for them to take that side of like, oh, well, you know, he's white, so he's rich, you know. Oh, well, she's, you know, she has papers, or, you know, all these excuses that they can possibly make that really don't have anything to do with their circumstances. So if they have the empowerment and they really truly believe in themselves, and if you instill that, because, you know, we as educators, and I think we are all educators, something you say may stick with that child for the rest of their lives. I know it did for me as a teacher. I mean, as a kid, I remember my teacher saying, I don't make a lot of money, but I love my job. My husband makes a lot of money and he hates it. And so I thought, well, is money important to me, or is my life important to me, my happiness? And I chose my happiness 100 times over money. Now, can you have both? Yes, of course you can. But for me at that moment, I thought I want to change lives. That was my whole purpose. And so now to empower my students, going back to the statistics I learned at in my master's program, we go into 9 years, how can I start this differently? So I created an affirmation that was really short, and I put it on a t-shirt, and I wear it all the time. And it says, I choose to be better today. I am smart, I am brave, I am powerful, I believe in myself. So I taught it to my students, and every day before they leave class, they say it. Every day before they leave, I say, count us off, and one kid says 1, 2, 3, and everybody says it. And I tell them, it may not mean anything to you today, it may not matter. I said, but it will one day. And you will know what it means to you, because I don't care if you're, 35, later in life and you're going through a divorce, you're gonna think of this affirmation just like you memorize the Pledge of Allegiance, because we say it and sometimes it means nothing to us. I said, I want this to matter. I want this to mean something to you, even if it's not today, right? Because that's one thing as an educator, that we may teach something today, but we may not see the results for years. And I'm okay with that, right? So now, with that affirmation, I teach it every year, and the kids take it with them, whether they use it or it's beneficial to them or not. I've taught it, they say it, they believe in it, maybe they don't. But the point is that they have something that can ground them at some point. And I believe in it so much, because I believe that every person should love themselves first and feel invincible in every way, shape, or form, and then we can do anything. We can do anything, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, the affirmation, the leadership is not always easy, and like the path, as you said, it's not straight. And so I think oftentimes what is most interesting is to talk about sort of like where the challenges were, where people failed, and sort of how you overcame those. So like, what was the biggest challenge or obstacle you faced sort of in your path of leadership or your current career, and sort of most importantly, how you overcame that challenge?
So let me answer the previous question very quickly before I answer that one. So I think that, to me, what matters is I want to make sure that we get into the real conversation of what makes us uncomfortable. Why is it that we say we cannot do it? Why is it that we convince ourselves that that's not the right thing and maybe I should take the back seat? I looked at what I've done, and part of me is like, I proved to myself I'm smart. Now I need to help somebody else know that proving to myself that it was smart wasn't the thing that made me smart. And those two things sound like they're different, but they aren't. It's very relatable to what you just said. It wasn't that I had a bigger brain. It wasn't that I was extremely smart. It was just that I worked hard. Mm-hmm. And I also didn't tell myself I cannot do this. So the part that I am interested is I get very involved in the community. I do maybe one event every 2 weeks or something like that. But when I looked at high school and middle school students, what I tried to catch is the don't think that you cannot achieve it, right? The middle school and high school students, sometimes I talk to them, it's like, no, that's not for me, I'm not ready, you need to be Einstein. I was like, where did you get this idea, right? Like, look at me, I can tell you I'm not Einstein. Here's how bad I did in physics. Here's the fact that I needed a tutor. Here's the thing that, it's like, and my life is physics, so those two things don't go together, apparently. And so that's one. And then the other thing is, now for grown-up women, is we still manage to tell that to ourselves, though, right? And so I don't understand why we grew, we overcame some of the obstacles, but we still tell it to ourselves. And there is this thing where you go into the meeting, or you want to ask for something, and they're like, maybe I shouldn't ask this way, maybe I was too harsh. Like, you have no idea how many times I rehearse what I say after I say it, or I rehearse it so many times that I don't say it because it was too many rehearsals by the time I have to say it. And then you go home and you're like, why did I not say this? And so it's ridiculous, because why am I wasting my energy like this? Honestly, I should have not rehearsed it, just say the thing. And if I didn't say it right, then say, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, or let me just correct it out loud. And so it's those things that my line of work has forced me to do it, because in my line of work, it's not like I cannot hold back the answer. It's like, no, we're gonna crash if I don't tell you right now. And so, or the numbers are the numbers, and we need to come out of this meeting knowing what we're gonna command on the spacecraft in 5 minutes. So my insecurities as a woman cannot get in the way of, we can't drive that way, you guys. And so that has forced me to okay, I don't give a crap if I'm insecure because it's a $2.5 billion mistake we're about. More interested is I'm interested in having the open conversation, because I do so many events, and then it's interesting that after the event and I get out of the podium, I get the actual question. Do you feel nervous when you say this? I'm like, yes, why did you not ask me that in front of everybody? Because the questions that I get is like, you know, how is your career and how much money do you make and how did you make it there? And it's like, but those are not the things that are holding us back. The things that are holding us back is why are you scared about speaking up? Or why are you scared to interrupt a guy? Or when you say something and the guy interrupts you, your immediate reaction is, let him say it. It's like, no, hold on. Like, I'm still saying something. I'm not
Yeah.
All right.
And so, anyway, so that was the answer.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my questions would be like, how do you find your voice? Because I know, everything you talk about resonates entirely with me. That would be my question. Like, how do you find your voice, particularly in a male-dominated room? Because I've been that person. I'm not dealing with science at all, but it's like everything you talk about, I know exactly.
Yeah,
So I'm glad you brought it up.
and I think it's also like restating what the question was. Because sometimes we're asked like, what's your opinion about this? And then you start saying your opinion, but the person doesn't like your opinion. And so they're like, well, but actually what, and you're like, well, I know you were asking me my opinion, but I couldn't say anything. So that actually happened to me last week. And it was like my boss and the deputy of my boss. And I was asked something about a command that we were gonna constrain that I hated it. And so I walked in and I'm like, why are we doing this? And then all the conversation was her telling me why we were gonna do it. And so at some point I was like, hey, I'm just telling you why you asked me. You called me here to give you my technical opinion of why we're doing this. So let me tell it to you and you can decide what we need to do. But that's why you call me here, is, and so I feel like afterwards her deputy, who's a man, actually came to me and said, that was really good. And I was like, okay.
What advice do you have for women to, because it's not necessarily easy, what advice do you have for women to help them find their voice or find the confidence to be able to do that?
I think that is related with, does it matter to you? And sometimes, sometimes we're like, I'm not gonna let anybody talk over me, so do you want bread? No. And it's like, well, but that doesn't matter. But, and then you feel bad, right? You're like, oh, I was not nice. But I think that what I have realized is I need to realize, do I care? Do I care enough to stop that person and be like, no, here's what we think we need to do. And when I recognize that it does matter to me, then at that point I feel picking on something that I don't believe in. So I think it's almost like searching back and thinking, will I be okay with that if I don't say anything? And if the answer is no, then pushing, right? Then you say it and maybe your voice is like,